Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine it, December 1922. News just breaks that electrifies, well, pretty much everyone.
Yeah, the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb, deep in the Valley of the Kings.
Exactly. Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter make the find, and our source today, it says right in the preface, this news sent a thrill of wonder across the whole civilized world.
It's hard to really capture the excitement now, isn't it? The first reports were just staggering. Chariots, these incredible gilded couches, chairs of state,
Royal clothing, food, cosmetics.
filled statues, alabaster vessels, just endless stuff, the sheer richness of it all.
And the source we're diving into today, it takes us right back to that moment. It's a book written literally right after 1923
Hot off the press.
by Sir E.A. Wallace Budge. He was a keeper of Egyptian and Assyrian antiquities at the British Museum then.
A real heavyweight.
Right. But Budge, he wasn't just, cataloging the gold. He uses the tomb find as a launch pad.
To get into something much bigger. Exactly. The whole religious context surrounding Tutankhamun, that intense conflict between the old cult of Aten and this revolutionary Aten cult.
So that's our focus for this deep dive, using Budge's 1923 perspective. We're looking at that religious drama.
We'll meet the key players as Budge saw them. Amun-Ra, the king of the gods.
Aten, the solar disk.
Yeah.
Amenhotep III.
His son, Amenhotep IV, who becomes Akhenaten, of course, and naturally Tutankhamun himself.
So the journey is understand Amen's power, then this radical shifts with Atenism, Tutankhamun's role after that, and crucially what Budge thought about Egyptian belief. Was it monotheism or something else?
Let's set that stage. Before all the upheaval, what was the religious scene like, according to Budge, especially in Thebes?
Well, Budge paints a picture of utter dominance by Amun-Ra.
Yeah, he's crystal clear. The great god of Thebes, king of the gods, great lord of Thebes. His power was immense.
And the priesthood associated with him.
Incredibly wealthy, incredibly powerful. Budge points out that the revenues from Amen's temples were basically national revenues. They were huge.
And Amenhotep III, the father of the reformer Akhenaten, he was fully bought into this Amen cult.
Oh, completely. Budge describes him pouring vast resources, inherited wealth, annual income into expanding and beautifying the Theban temples.
Like Karnak.
Especially Karnak. Major additions there. And that famous avenue of sphinxes between Karnak and Luxor. He didn't hold back, hired the best architects, provided, unlimited labor.
Budge also gives us little glimpses of his reign beyond religion, doesn't he?
He does. Mentions his hunting exploits, killing 170 wild cattle, 102 lions. These were actually commemorated on scarabs.
Wow.
Yeah, and it shows his reach, too. He was getting tribute from Nubia, Syria, Western Asia, a major player on the world stage then.
And his wife, Queen T, Budge makes a point about her origins.
Right, that she was of, let's say, non-royal, perhaps humble origins. He even names her parents, Iu and Thuo. But she clearly held significant influence.
And Budge hints she might have had leanings towards Imlaken. Even then.
It's an intriguing suggestion he makes. He talks about this huge artificial lake made for her estate near Thebes, like 1.5 miles long.
Just for her.
Apparently. And a festival was held there described as Aten Sparkles. So yeah, Budge uses this to suggest maybe, just maybe, there was some interest in Aten bubbling under the surface, even during Amenhotep III's very Amen-focused reign.
Okay, so that sets us up for the next generation, the son, Amenhotep IV. Things change drastically.
Yeah, Budge describes him as a mere boy when he starts thinking about religion really intensely, and he reaches this, revolutionary conclusion.
Which was?
To abandon Amen worship. Completely. And not just Amen, but pretty much all the traditional gods of Egypt.
And replace them with Aten, the one god. How does Budge describe Aten?
Primarily as the physical solar disk, the literal face of the sun, the source of all life, all heat, all light.
And the hymns, Budge quotes.
They use striking language. Aten is one and alone, self-created, eternal, the creator of absolutely everything, heaven, earth, all creatures.
And he didn't just change the god, he changed his own identity, too.
Right. Ditched Amenhotep IV, became Akhenaten. Budge actually prefers the spelling Akhenaten and says it means Akhenaten is content.
And he adopted titles like living in truth.
He did. And this wasn't some quiet personal belief. Budge makes it clear Akhenaten went on the offensive against Amen.
Oh, so?
He ordered the name Amen to be physically hacked out, chiseled off stelae, statues, monuments, everywhere.
even off his own father's name, Cartouches.
Yes, Budge notes that even Amenhotep III's cartouches weren't spared if they contained the name Amen, and often the plural word for gods was also erased. This was systematic.
That must have caused uproar, especially in Thebes, with that powerful Amen priesthood.
Oh, absolutely. Budge talks about serious resentment building up, murmuring, threats, disputes. It sounds like a really tense situation.
Which leads to him leaving Thebes.
Ultimately, yes, he makes this incredibly bold move to just abandon the traditional capital altogether.
And build a new one, Akhenaten.
Exactly. Horizon of Aten, about 160 miles north near modern Amarna. Budge emphasizes it was basically virgin territory, untouched soil.
Symbolically pure.
Sort of, yeah, a clean slate. Budge speculates, maybe he felt driven out of Thebes for safety reasons for himself and his family. Or maybe he just felt he needed a totally fresh start away from the resistance to really establish this new religion properly.
Which brings us right to that central question Budge tackles. Was this Atenism actually monotheism?
Yeah, he digs into this. He looks closely at those hymns to Aten, the ones attributed to Akhenaten himself and another high official named A.
And what stands out in those hymns?
The language is powerful. Thou art sparkling. Thy love is mighty and great, maker of every land, creator of whatsoever there is upon it. Really emphasizing Aten's universal creative power.
How does Budge contrast that with, say, earlier hymns to Ra or Amen?
He acknowledges similarities, especially the solar aspects, because Ra and Amen had strong solar connections too. But, he stresses, the Aten hymns hammer home this idea of Aten being alone, one God like whom there is no other, the sole creator.
So Budge, writing in 1923, does he conclude, yep, this was monotheism?
This is really key to Budge's analysis. He argues, he sort of questions it. He thinks Akhenaten personally might have grasped a monotheistic concept or something very close to it.
But not the wider population.
Exactly. He suggests the general understanding, the practice on the ground in Egypt, remained fundamentally polytheistic. He even wonders if Akhenaten's Aten wasn't radically new, but maybe an extreme focus on one aspect already present in older solar deities.
And he mentions the word neater.
Right. He points out that the Egyptian word neater, often translated as God, wasn't historically used exclusively for one single supreme being. It could apply more broadly. So was Akhenaten's use of it for Aten truly a sign of exclusive monotheism in the modern sense? Budge is cautious.
And Budge uses the Amarna letters, those clay tablets found at Akhenaten, to show the practical side effects of Akhenaten's religious focus.
Yes, they're fascinating evidence, diplomatic letters. Budge highlights how they seem to show Akhenaten neglecting foreign policy.
While he's busy with religious reform.
Seems like it. You have these desperate letters from rulers in Syria and Phoenicia saying, hey, we're being attacked by the Kabiri, we need grain, we need troops.
And Akhenaten.
Budge suggests his response was basically ineffective or non-existent. A huge contrast, Budge says, to his father Amenhotep III, who had a really strong, active foreign policy. It shows how this religious obsession had real-world consequences for the stability of the empire.
So the revolution wasn't just theological, it had political fallout. And then along comes Tutankhamun.
Right. Introduced as Akhenaten's son-in-law, he married Ankhesenpaten, Akhenaten's third daughter. Budge mentions some early theories suggested Tutankhamun might have initially stuck with Atenism, like his wife, for a little while.
But only for a little while.
A very little while, it seems. Budge states pretty clearly that Tutankhamun quickly realized Atenism was a failure. Politically, religiously, it just hadn't worked.
So he switched back.
Decisively. He changed his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamen. He changed his wife's name, too, from Akhesenpaten to Ankhesenamen. He became, as Budge puts it, a fervent follower of Amen and the traditional gods.
And for Budge, writing in 1923, this is Tutankhamun's main historical importance.
Primarily, yes. Budge argues his fame really rests on restoring the national worship of Amen, making the Aten supporters relinquish control over the god's massive revenues, essentially undoing everything Akhenaten had tried to do.
Which loops us right back to that spectacular tomb discovery.
Exactly. All that amazing stuff. The gold, the chariots, the furniture, it belonged to the very king who led Egypt back to its old religion.
And what happened to Akhenaten's city, Akhenaten?
It faded fast. Budge notes that once the court moved back to Thebes and Amen was restored, Akhenaten just lost its purpose. The officials, the artisans who'd followed Akhenaten there, they left. Went back to Thebes, back to worshipping Amen. The city fell into decay.
So looking back through Budge's lens from 1923, it's this incredible arc. Dominant Amen, than Akhenaten's radical, intense Aten experiment.
An experiment that really shook the foundations.
And then Tutankhamun bringing it all back to the traditional ways very quickly.
And circling back to that monotheism question, Budge's view, again from that time, was that while Akhenaten might have touched on a kind of monotheism personally, it wasn't a national reality. Egypt remained polytheistic. Atenism, for Budge, was maybe more like elevating one aspect of the divine, already present in gods like Ra and Amen, rather than a total break into singular god worship for everyone.
It's probably worth just mentioning Lord Carnarvon again, briefly. Budge gives him credit in the preface, doesn't he?
He does. Points out Carnarvon had been funding digs in Egypt for 16 years before this amazing find, all his own money.
A long commitment.
A huge commitment. And Budge notes that whatever historical misinterpretations some early writers might have made right after the discovery, the find itself was invaluable. It gave this incredible snapshot of the art and craftsmanship of that specific, tumultuous Amarna period. Budge also acknowledges Carnarvon's sad, untimely death not long after the tomb was open.
So what does looking at this source, this 1923 book, really offer us today? What does it mean for you listening now?
Well, Budge's book, written right in the heat of that discovery moment, gives us a fascinating perspective from that time. It underlines just how dramatic this period was: intense religious change, political shifts.
And how one pharaoh's deeply held beliefs could ripple outwards.
Absolutely. Affecting the economy through those temple revenues, society, art, and even, as those Amarna letters show, foreign policy and the empire's stability. It all seems interconnected.
And here's something Budge's work really brings home for me. It shows how much we can learn about what people actually believed, or at least what the elite believed, not just from grand official statements on temples.
Right, not just the propaganda.
But from more personal things, like the hymns and prayers found in tombs. These texts offer a really powerful window into how they conceived of God or gods, especially during such a radical moment.
It's a different kind of evidence.
So here's a final thought, something provocative maybe for you to mull over. Think about how these kinds of radical shifts in fundamental beliefs, whether it's ancient Egypt grappling with Amen and Aten, or shifts happening in societies today, how do they echo outwards? How do they really change the fabric of everything, from art and politics right down to daily life and how nations interact?
It's a big question.
It is. Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us into Tutankhamun's world, and specifically into that complex religious drama as seen through the eyes of Sir Wallace Budge, writing nearly a century ago.
We really hope this exploration of the source has maybe shed some new light on this incredible period of history for you, and maybe sparked some curiosity to dig even deeper yourself.